going to show you a solo 4 phase on the final boss in the dungeon Ghost of the Deep, without the use of any raid weapons from Root of Nightmares, or without the use of the Bipod rocket launcher's heavy ammo exploit. If you don't know what the exploit is right now, what's going around with the Bipod rockets, I'll quickly explain it to you quick. So, people are putting double reserves on their plate, number one. So whatever it is, say it's a solar rocket, they put double solar reserves on, they swap to it. They have a bipod rocket that I do not have, okay? They have a bipod rocket which comes on Cold Comfort, which is a dungeon rocket, or Last Wish, which is a solar rocket from Last Wish, right? They then get 14 rockets because they've done it with the double reserves. Now, if they didn't double reserve, it's 12. But the point of it is, they can then break the boss's shield with Arbalest. So they're getting the benefits of Arbalest, right? Whilst then being able to swap to another exotic heavy like Leviathan's Breath or Sleeper's Simulant to do massive damage. They're getting best of the both worlds, and I consider this as an exploit. And kind of unfair as well. I don't have the bipod rocket, which is why I decided to try and see how much damage I could do sticking to just Arbalest with a legendary heavy, which legendary heavies don't feel that great in this dungeon. Probably because the boss's HP is probably too much. So people are resorting to these tactics. And I'm just saying that this solo 4 phase does not have that tactic in there. I might use it though when I get my bipod rocket. So in the meantime, I'm doing it on Arc Titan as well, because everyone's doing it on a Solar Titan. I couldn't even find one video of somebody doing this on Arc Titan. There will be somebody that's doing it on Arc Titan, but I couldn't find it. So that motivated me to do a run on Arc Titan. So I've got survivability build, I've got DPS build. So you need to have 2 builds ready to go. So number 1 build is revolving around Insurmountable Skullfort, which is a fantastic exotic. It doesn't get much use these days. It used to back in vanilla days, but it's really good at the final boss, and you'll see that. The obviously subclass, I mean the super is Thunder Crash, has to be, right? The other super just wouldn't work for DPS on the final boss because they're floating. Thruster Dodge, Seismic Strike, Pulse Grenade, Knockout, Touch of Thunder, Fragments, Ions, Spark of Haste, which is a big one, Magnitude, and Spark of Shock. As for the survivability build, you can see there, right? So if there's any questions, you can see, look, heavy-handed for making orbs, double arc resist, charged up, the 2 green mods, charged up elemental charge, gives us 4 stacks of charge of light. Healthy finisher helps us maintain 4 stacks of charge of light. We might lose a stack here and there, but we'll gain it back through elemental charge. We then swap to our DPS build, which means we have 4 stacks of charge of light. We have now elemental time dilation, which gives us 15 seconds per block, which will give us up to 60 seconds of the triple void weapon surge to match our heavy weapon. Triple void loader, you didn't need that, probably just needed the double void. And then we've now switched to a concussive dampener instead of the charged up, so that we still get the 4 stacks, but we now get a concussive dampener when we do that swap. So I've committed to, like I said, a heavy, legendary heavy, which don't feel very good in this dungeon. But I wanted to push to see how much damage I could get with a rocket launcher and Arbalest combo, and this is the most that I could get. I could have got higher if I had had explosive light tracking on a hothead. I do have loads of hotheads with explosive light, but no tracking on there. If the rocket launcher does not have tracking on it in its legendary, you can't use it in this fight. It's as simple as that. You can't use it. It will destroy your DPS. It must have tracking, which is why I went to Red Herring, right? The weirdest rocket launcher I've ever used. I've never used this rocket launcher, but now I love it because it's got tracking for me. It's craftable. It's got Frenzy, 15% damage bonus. So it's better than nothing, because I was using just a tracking clown cartridge roll hothead, which was doing decent, but this ended up doing far better. If you get a blowout with tracking and explosive light, use it. Right? Adaptive frames are the best rockets in the game, apart from exotic rockets. So, yeah, that's why we're actually using this weird rocket launcher. But if you've got a hothead with tracking, explosive light, use that instead. Double special, of course, because that gives us more heavy. So I'm using powerful least resistance, Arbalest for DPS. But for when we're surviving, it's Riptide, powerful least resistance. I will sometimes swap to Riskrunner when I've got enough heavy on the ground, which I'll talk about in the run. But that's basically everything on the build. So as I rallied the flag just before I started this fight, I swapped to my double void reserves chestplate, rallied, so then I get 9 rockets, as I should be only getting 7 with this rocket, which we'll use that here and there, well, for every phase when we can, swap them to the plate, but then swap them back to the correct plate. So this is how the fight looks on an Arc Titan. Do I recommend it for a solo flawless? No. This is a high skilled, difficult run. Everything's got to go your way with the super. Surviving's great, but the super's a thing. You've got to know exactly what you're doing with that T-crash on DPS. And yes, I've been there. I've been there where I've missed my T-crash on DPS because the boss has just sidestepped. You know how it is. Well, not even sidestepped, but you know, side floated. You know what it's like with them. So I don't recommend it for a solo flawless, but I was adamant on wanting to do something with this dungeon with Arc Titan. Right? Obviously solo Titan's going to be the one to get you clear and get your emblem. I don't care too much at this minute because I've already got my emblem. I got my emblem days ago. People think I haven't got it or something. I don't know why. Someone said the other day. I had it ages ago. I got the emblem ages. So yeah, this was just, as I say, for me to see how is Arc Titan faring this, because Arc Hunter right now is the king in this. Well, Arc and maybe Warlock even. Warlock's starting to get meta for this dungeon now. See, at first people were like, the Warlock's the worst. No, it's not. Warlock's probably the best, because now you can actually solo 2-phase the first boss, and you can actually solo 2-phase the last boss on a Warlock, which is insane. Comfortable solo 3-phase as well on a with Legend of Arceus and all this stuff. So yeah, I don't think the Titan is like king at solo flaws for this. Even on solo's going to get it done for you, but it's not going to be fancy. It's just going to be, you know, you've seen that gameplay. So I'm sure watching this you know the mechanics, so I don't need to go over all the mechanics. This is for added information on things that you can do to help stay alive. So for me, I have to adjust everything because everything revolves around my seismic strike. I've got all the Arc mods on for the seasonal artifact, and there's loads of them. Thunderous Retort, Shock and Awe, Lightning Strike Twice, Electric Armor, every single one on. Right, you need to put them on for this. Arc Titan isn't known for survivability, but you can make it work because of, I think it's because of Knockout, the aspect. Well, actually, that's when I'm using Zimceps. That's not applicable to this. No, with Skullfort, you're going to get health regen every kill, but not only that, it blinds all the enemies, which Seismic Strike never used to do that back in the day when people used to use this build, right? It was the best build in the game at one point, like 2017, 2018, for Titans. I don't think it blinded enemies like it does now. So it blinds all the enemies. So if you get your successful melee charge, you're also going to get one of the seasonal artifact mods to proc and do extra lightning damage. So it's really good at quick ad clear, because this final boss fight rewards you if your ad clear is good. Like, I mean quick. You got to play quick. You can't play slow. I think this is why people are put off by the solo flaws. You can't play slow. You've got to play quick to reward damage. If you want to be just you and the boss doing DPS, then you need to clear out the acolytes quick. Doing the plates or doing the chain mechanic, right, or whatever you want to call it, that isn't too bad. If you're really struggling, go Riskrunner. Honestly, it's best in slot. Riskrunner is. The reason why I didn't use Riskrunner for 3 phases of the fight is because when you use double special, you get more heavy on the floor. Now we've got 9 rockets, but within a DPS phase of this boss fight, you can fire probably 12 to 13 rockets, maybe even 14 if you're really good. Like 40, up to 14 rockets, but we only hold 7 naturally in certain rockets, or 8. But if you've got more heavy on the floor, this adds to your DPS. So this got me thinking, like, what other rockets? Actually, honestly, I have tried Two-Tail Fox, which was the most interesting thing like for me to want to try, because Two-Tailed Fox is like literally better than Galahorn solo wise. I know it's not team wise, but solo wise, Two-Tailed Fox is like better than Galahorn is now. And it was doing decent-ish damage, 2.5 mil, not 3. So it was 4 phase and nearly, or just about, just on there. But if you miss a couple of rockets, then you wouldn't. You'd be a 5 phase. The boss would have 2% left, and then it'd be annoying. So no, I was wanting to at least minimum 4 phase. 3 phase if I could, but I didn't know starting out my power grind what would happen, because obviously the boss is 1810 in power, but you can overlevel the dungeon by 20 or 21 or whatever. If you're 1831, that's what sort of Grey Boss said. If you're 1831, you do maximum damage to this boss. I thought it was 1830, but he said 1831. So we'll just go with what he says because he knows more. 1831. I'm 1820, 1829. So if I got those 2 extra light levels, I don't think it would make the difference between 4 and 3 phase for this particular damage rotation. But for other damage rotations on different classes, it might help. I don't know. Can I be bothered to grind out the power level right now, today? I don't know. Maybe rerun it back at 1831 and test more types of weapons. As I am sort of like, I have enjoyed this dungeon, but I haven't enjoyed the meta of the dungeon too much. The meta of the dungeon is a bipod rocket swap into Leviathan's Breath, and I'm sort of getting a little tired of how many videos I've saw people do that. I understand that it's going to help them, and you know, it's to counteract the fact that the boss has so much HP, but it does get tired watching it. I get tired. I don't click on them now. I've stopped clicking on anybody who does Leviathan. Well, I'll click on it, look at it. As soon as I see him do bipod rockets, I'm just clicking off video. Click off video, I don't want to know. Watch someone else's video and try and find someone else who's actually trying to do some decent damage without exploiting. So the Trace is actually really good at taking out the arc orbs when that happens. Obviously as well, the seismic strike from Skullfort, when it does that extra lightning damage from the seasonal artifact, it's going to explode them all. So I don't need to really optimize taking down the orbs, arc orbs. And if I do want to optimize that, then the Trace is good for doing so. I don't spam the fusion because you're not going to get. You're going to find if you run Riptide with a Trace, you're not going to get much ammo for Riptide. So use it sparingly. I could have run a 1-2 punch shotgun, but I actually enjoy Riptide so much on this fight that I always use it because I've got chill clip on it, and it's really good on the hard guardians. So you can see the insane amount of ad clear that it's doing quickly. See, what I was doing there is waiting out the Acolyte phase. The Acolytes are on an unlimited phase rotation. I think it's 45 to 50 seconds that they're on the rotation. I did count it out the other day too. I couldn't remember how long it was. It's about 50 seconds, but this means you can manipulate that rotation of ads to make it so that there's just you and the boss up for damage. That requires good builds for good ad clear. So certain builds are going to suffer, like a solo hunter, it's going to suffer. Arc hunter, not so much. You know, certain builds are going to suffer more than others. But on your survivability build, you need to have a good bit of ad clear potential in it. But then obviously you need to think of the DPS side of things when you get to that. But that all needs to be set up in advance before you even get to DPS, of course, when you do your quick swap. So we're on our final symbol. This is where we need to do our quick ad clear. So I've got a pulse nade down. So it's a combination of pulse nade / seismic strike. Right. Once all ads are clear, then go for deep sight. Then pick a bit of cover. I always like to pick a bit of cover before I do the swap, because sometimes you get melted when you're in your menu, and you don't want that. Right. Now we've done our quick swap, of course. Arbalest. What I do is I jump up in the air, then T-crash. I don't just T-crash from the floor. It's just because I get a good angle to get my T-crash. My T-crash must hit. It must hit. If it does not hit, DPS is done. It's over. And now it's just rocket launcher. Like I say, you can pick up extra rockets. I think I fire 11 rockets in this phase. If you can get a pulse grenade on the boss, it increases your damage so much. Like, it's really good, honestly. If you're getting damage to N solo, that's really good damage. And I've seen people do that with Leviathan's Breath. Get to around about N. Comfortable phase for them. For me, it's a chaotic phase. Now, there was one other reason why I use this rocket. It was big brain stuff is. The big brain stuff is that this rocket launcher has a little origin trait called Psycho Hack. This debuffs the boss. You can see the boss will be glowing. Like a red, like a strobe red down the boss. This actually means that you gain damage resistance against the boss. You take less damage from the boss. This is fantastic. Because especially when you're at the back end of your damage phase and acolytes do spawn in, yeah they do, fair enough, but don't, you've got to commit to damage a little bit still. If you've got full HP and acolytes just spawn in, don't worry about it, do a bit more damage. But this allows you to do a little bit more damage longer with this rocket launcher because I'm debuffing the boss. This is something that Hothead doesn't have because it's got that stupid champion mechanic that I never use, stunning recovery. I don't know why we can't just put origin traits in and out of guns now. Like just make them a thing that you put them in and out of guns. You know, why is it exclusive? Why is stunning, you know, the stunning recovery just for Hothead? Why can't I have it on my red herring or vice versa? That should have been part of the crafting. It's been quite annoying. Like for me, the amount you must imagine me as a solo GM player, the amount of Hotheads I've had and went through. I've went through so many. Right, but it just happened where I haven't got that particular role tracking explosive light, because probably at the time I was thinking, well, I've got an explosive light one with field prep, so I'm good, I don't need the tracking. But when a boss comes out like this, right, tracking is a must. Without the tracking, it's a waste of time running rockets. You may as well run a linear fusion rifle, which good linear fusion rifles in this are going to be cataclysmic, like legendary wise, not exotic I'm talking about. Cataclysmic with bait and switch is going to do you well. I think the best choice is an aggressive frame linear. I'm not talking about the raid one, but actually the stasis one. Right. I think Taipan you've saw me use. Taipan's alright. I did try and test the damage of it at 1829. It was doing okay damage, but I feel as though aggressive frame would have done better than what Taipan was doing. But this is just, as I say, this video is just trying to optimize damage a little bit, but it is going to be a long fight anyways, especially with me being on a build that's not as potent as the Solar Titan. Because yeah, I've got electric armor, I've got a lot of stuff going for me with the artifact, but don't kid yourself that there's been a couple of moments during this run, sorry, I could have died easily. Which is why I don't think I recommend Arc Titan for the Solo Flawless. It is possible, it is. It's just, you know, it's just a case of, are you going to solo 4-phase both bosses on a solo Flawless? You know, not missing one T-Crash. T-Crash is a difficult super to use on this boss. It's not like Chaos Reach. Chaos Reach is like really easy to use. Just break the boss's shield with Arbalest. Pop your super from a range, sit in a hill and rift, you're comfortable. So, you know, but it's got a lot of good things about it, obviously, as I said. If you can get it all to work, as I say, you're doing good damage, but it just depends on your power level, which is what I've discussed already. If you're 1810, if you're 1820, you're going to be 5 to 6 phasing. You're definitely not 4 phasing. Not with this at least. So it's all light level, which I have recommended that since the dungeon came out. If you're going to go for the Solo Flawless, 18-20 minimum before you attempt, for players who are not familiar with this, because it is the hardest. I definitely do think it's still it's probably the hardest dungeon we've had. Now that I've let this dungeon settle with me a little bit, this dungeon's definitely the hardest that they've brought out. Not mechanically, I mean, yes, maybe, kind of. It's not that's the issue with the run. The issue is, imagine for 1 second Bipod rockets didn't exist, right? Everyone would be 4 phasing, 3 phasing at best. Yeah. It's like, and that's the top end players. The worst players, you know, they're 5-6 phasing. So the DPS requirements of the dungeon is high demand. Especially at this final boss fight, it's a high demand, you've got a lot to do. And the replayability of the dungeon's gonna be difficult solo wise. It's been a fun challenge for launch, and it's been something that people have talked about, or you know, how it's a difficult solo flawless, and it's been, you know, for good challenge and stuff. But the replayability of the dungeon's going to go down. The only thing that's going to keep it is the team aspect. A 5 team of 3 in this dungeon is really good, right? It's not difficult, but it's balanced. It's not balanced really well for solo. That's just the nature of it. Even when you're 20 levels over, even when you're 20 levels over, you need to be stacking triple surges, everything. And it's just what this dungeon's gonna be. And I don't think they're gonna nerf the HP. They had the opportunity last week or whenever, because people were talking about, oh, they're gonna nerf the HP. They had the chance then, and they didn't do it, and they haven't come out and said anything about it. So this is how the dungeon's gonna be. But just may I remind you, next season we might not have as OP mods as what we've got now. So Arc Hunter's not going to do as well. So, you know, they're not thinking, unless they give us solo operative back, right, okay, the dungeon will be a little bit more palatable to run. Because, like, running these back-to-back flawless as well every week, who's doing that? Who's doing that? For what reason? No, they're just running it in a team. They'll get the emblem once, that's it. So you can see how effective it is, though, with the blind thing. The Hive Guardians have spoke at length on my previous Warlock run about all the mechanics and stuff. The Storm Caller obviously is the least threatening. You can even fight her head on, just dodging left and right her attacks. I've done it plenty of times. The Sentinel can be the most threatening because he can knock you off map. His 2 shields can almost kill you if both of them hit you. He can suppress you. The Solo Hunter is easily controllable, but is lethal. It's just a case of waiting out their attack. Or it depends. Chill Clip does a good job of sort of suppressing, freezing before. It just depends. You can just let the Solo Hunter, the Hive Guardian, do the super while you fight the ads. Once that super's ended, it's your opportunity to go and then kill the Hive Guardian. So just don't rush it. Some builds like glaive builds or 1-2 punch shotguns can just go in there and melt them before they pop super, so there is that. I'm really used to the playstyle of Riptide in this though. Riskrunner is another good one, but what I was wanting to do, because I know that double special heavy grants more heavy, I was wanting to play at least 2 phases, 2 to 3 with a double special, and then when I'm on the final phase, to ease the pressure of like not randomly dying to the orbs or something, because it can happen still. I have actually been killed off the shoulder charge and acolyte, and then the orbs exploding, because the extra arc damage that the Season Artifact mod does sometimes just explodes them right on top of you, and it can actually instantly kill you. So there's actually like still a risk of dying, to be honest. It's fun though, it's a fun little challenge. If you're a Titan main and you want to challenge yourself and you want to come off solo Titan, then do this. I recommend this, or even Void. I did try Bubble. I'm sort of enjoying Void in this dungeon, but the problem is Helm of Saint 14 does not work. It's been bugged apparently 2 seasons. Now this isn't generally an issue, because for DPS, when have we been using Saint 14? Not much, right? Ever since 5.3.0, barely using Helm. But for this dungeon, I actually needed Helm of Saint 14 for DPS. It would have been the perfect exotic to survive while DPSing with a linear fusion rifle, but it doesn't work. It's bugged at the minute, Helm of Saint 14, so I can't do the bubble strat. Because bubble does stack with weapon surges, so you can get a lot of damage out with linears. That would be a strat that I will do when Helm of Saint 14 gets fixed. Have they said it's broken? I don't think so. I read on Reddit other people are having the same issue with Saint. I don't even know if they're aware of it. It's been bugged 2 seasons apparently. I mean, you can't have such an exotic like that be bugged. Like, I know it only grants overshield, but it's such a big difference for DPS, and because if you are just on bubble, he's just going to pelt you with the arc when you're trying to peek out to do DPS, so it's not feasible to do damage that way on Void because of this. But when Helm of St. 14 comes back, it's feasible to do it. Obviously, Well's different. Well's a whole different thing. So, Thunderous Retort's going to proc as well, because we're really weak there. We're weaker than what we wanted. But it's going to add that extra damage. Now I'm just calculating where all my bricks are on the map. The further you are away from the boss as well, the better it is for your rocket to track the boss. Because if the boss does strafe left or right, it's giving your rocket launcher a chance to still hit. Sometimes I'm closer to the boss than what I like, but that was just the way I was working around to get the bricks. Now I do have shooter loot on the trace, and I know someone's going to say you have shooter loot on the trace. I don't like it, it's too slow. I'd rather just gradually go around the map, rocketing while picking the bricks up. And I found that quicker, rather than having to swap to a trace to shoot the damn brick, to then swap back to my rocket. That's less damage for me. So for me, I would just preferred to do calculate my route when I'm doing DPS. But generally I have all my bricks in middle anyways, because that's where I kind of like to do middle, and then what I do is I sort of go on the outskirts of the map and where the water section is, but at the back end of damage, when damage is about to end, most likely that you're half HP or less, I can just go in the water section and I'm safe. So I always finish a damage section, a damage phase, right, where the water section is. That's just what I do, and it's at the back areas of the map. At the start of every phase, obviously always deal with unites. Now, Skullfort can't one-shot these knights, so you've got to put some damage in. If you've got a pulse nade, that makes a big difference. A pulse nade, a couple of melees, or Riptide. But like I say, don't spam Riptide, because like you can see, because of how special ammo works, when you pick it up when you've got double special, it splits the ammo in half. Yes, but it always means I'm going to get more trace rifle ammo than fusion rifle ammo. It's just how it's going to be. So at the back end of the fight, I recommend you start using heavy. So like when you're trying to stand your ground and kill a knight in the circle, right? Just use a rocket. Use whatever's in your heavy slot, because you've got plenty of heavy, providing that you are using double special heavy. Because it actually makes it so much less stressful that if you can just stand and one-shot, stand in the green section and then one-shot your knight, without having to worry that am I going to stay alive in this. But if you are at any point like worrying, like you're nearly dying at these sections, you can swap off the trace and then put on Riskrunner. Right? Because then Riskrunner will actually deal with everything. You can actually kill your knight quickly, because the boss is just going to proc Riskrunner's perk over and over, so you can just, you know, put your damage in. And I do on the final phase of damage, before the final phase, I swapped to Riskrunner, because it's just worth it. Because I've worked hard enough on the first 3 phases to get as many bricks up as I wanted. The way I do this entire fight is longer than average. I've saw how other people do it. Other people do it, especially on Arc Hunter. They just skip the Arc Knights, the Boomer Knights on the corners of the map, and literally just do the mechanics one for one. Right, and they don't bother farming ammo up, or they don't bother waiting for acolytes. That's only suitable to that playstyle though. If you're playing on a subclass that requires additional help from you, then this is how you should play it. You need to wait for the acolyte phase, right? Because it's on a timer. Now you could have just finished your 3 symbols, ready for DPS, right? Then you go for your last Hive Guardian. But then an acolyte phase spawns middle of your DPS phase. Remember, it's a 45-second damage window that you have. So like I said, the 50-second time for acolytes. So you can time it in such a way that as you're doing damage at the back end, or even better, if your damage phase just ends and the acolyte phase just spawns, that would be perfect. If you can make it like that. But you've got to know the timing. Like, I like to prep the rooms as well. So if it's a particular symbol that I don't want to dunk, it might be this phase. I'm not sure. But if it's a symbol that I want to dunk, but I've already come here, then I'll prep the room, I'll kill all the acolytes, and I'll damage the guardian so far. I'm not sure if this was the... No, this was a phase where I actually did need to kill Sentinel for the symbol. But you'll have saw me on the previous phases where I've just cleared the room and got the Hive Guardian half HP and then leave. And then clear the other two Hive Guardians, dunk the two symbols, and then wait for Acolyte phase outside, right? And then as you've just cleared an Acolyte phase, go in, take your time killing the Hive Guardian because you've done all the work beforehand, right? Then get that last symbol, then dunk. Well, then you'll have another Acolyte wave on damage. You'll clear that out, then you can dunk, and then it's just you and the boss. Sounds more complicated than it is. Or, as I say, you can just go on Archon or Assassin's Cowl and just avoid all that, and then just do it like that. Because you can go and visit any at a moment's notice, and I think they'll end up nerfing that build because of that. Because of this build, because of this dungeon. I think they'll end up nerfing it, touching Assassin's Cowl finally. I think it's really... Assassin's Cowl's balanced fair enough on Stasis Hunter, because that's where it all began. It all began with people using the Assassin's Cowl on Stasis Hunter. But it's not... It's really powerful on Arc. It's to the point where it's so much more powerful than anything else in the game, even Solar Titan. Because Solar Titan does still have a weakness, and the weakness is its hammer itself, the mini hammer. If you are to miss that mini hammer on an ad, and you've already used your healing grenade, say you have a healing grenade, then you are at risk of dying there. Right? That's a risk. And I have actually lost to Soul Falls on Titan, day 2, day 3, when the dungeon launched, because I missed my hammer. Now, hammer feels different, mini hammer, and a couple of people have said the mini hammer, the way it tracks enemies is different. It just feels god awful to use on console. I'll be honest, it just feels god awful to use. Which I haven't even been using it. When I'm playing Solar Titan now, I'm not even using the mini hammer. But that's, as I say, maybe a discussion for another video. But we're dunking our symbols now. Like I say, it's just literally the same as what we've been doing, but our damage is at the U, so we've got more than enough damage in us. Providing we don't miss a T-crash or anything like that, then we should be able to finish the boss off in another 2 phases. The only problem with this run is that it takes a lot of setup. You know, somebody who's 5 phase the boss can probably do it quicker than, or 5 or even 6, still doing it quicker than me at a 4 phase, just because it requires a lot of setup, right? It's not just a case of I can just go to DBS at any time. Everything needs to be scheduled, everything needs to be right, and it's a long fight anyways. So, and how many console runs are there? Like, there's not many. There was one console run I saw at like 50 minutes or something, like the full dungeon, which was really, you know, fair play to him who done that. But they are using exploits to get that done. Without the exploit, you can't do that. It's just not feasible. You can't run Arbalest in your loadout then swap. Like I said, to Leviathan's Breath, you're not going to have enough Leviathan's Breath ammo to do it. You could farm up ammo in middle like I am, and then have bricks and then go to those bricks. I guess you could do that, but then that's just complicating the matter as it is, because you've already got enough to do. You've got your swaps to do, you've got your armor charges to think about, and on top of that, what symbol you dunk on last, because obviously, I mean, it doesn't matter actually what your last symbol is. I always dunk middle. The reason for this is because I need a consistent place to do my Thunder Crash. If I dunk, you know, up top and then Thunder Crash from up top, chances are I'm going to miss it because there's more lead time. There's more time for that boss to strafe. Because if you actually pay attention to what the boss does, the boss pops its super as damage starts. So the boss can't strafe when that is happening, which is why the timing is just perfect for doing middle damage for me. There's different types of ways of doing damage to this boss. There's so many different ways. There's different parts of the map you can stand where you can just pitch up and do damage. Even the Thrall can't touch you because they spawn when you're on DPS. So there's all these little things you can do, but you need to pick. You need to know them all, and then you need to pick the best DPS strat that you feel comfortable with and is accustomed to the class that you're using. The problem is though, the classes are getting pigeonholed into one class to use it. So the best solo flaws for this dungeon for Titan is solo. The best solo flaws for the Hunter is Arc. Even though we've got Night Stalker, still Arc, still better. The best solo flaws for the Warlock is probably Well / Arc Warlock, because Well's now, if you're getting that power, Well's really good in this. And think about it, it is. Because Well has always been the best thing for when you try to do damage safely to a boss, you can just sit in a well and you're okay with that. Right? And then you can just put on some braces for your survivability setup, and then when you get a DPS you can swap to whatever you want to swap to. So Well / Arc Warlock, because Arc Warlock is insane, the damage it's putting out with Geomag stabilizers. Which is what I wanted. I want to rerun an Arc Warlock back as well to see the damage I can get, like I say, at this power, as opposed to 1822 what I was last week or so. So we got a pulse nade on this damage phase, which was really good. It adds so much damage. I'm just strafing off back to the back side of the map. Notice the boss will get debuffed. You can see how that boss is strobing that red stuff. It just means that we're going to take less damage. Plus, if you're right back here like this, you can do so much damage. I went in the water by accident. You can do so much damage. And when you have run out of rockets, and you're comfortable that you've fired your 12 rockets, 11, 12 rockets, start doing Arbalest ammo at the back end of damage. You know, if you can get 2 shots in, that's an extra 100k damage. It all adds up. Every phase adds up. And you really want to have, on the final phase of damage that you do, and you want the boss to have as least amount of HP as possible. Now I switched to Riskrunner here, like I said earlier on in the video. Once you've been in this boss arena 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and you've been playing with double special, you should have plenty of heavy ammo to justify just putting on something else. And Riskrunner's gonna be, it's gonna be there for your mess up moments. So if you do happen to mess up and you shoulder charge the wrong enemy type, right, and there's like 4 orbs, you'll tank it because of Riskrunner. You'll tank it because T10 resil, double arc resist, electric armor, spark of haste by the way as well will save you, which spark of haste is just extra resistant. I don't know how much it is, to be honest. I haven't bothered looking, but I know it stacks. That'll stack with everything else. So when I'm running around trying to get on my shoulder charge kills, I'm tankier because of this, because of Spark of Haste, which is a new arc fragment from, I can't mind when it was, 2 seasons ago or whatever. There are certain places you can stand on the zone as well, like this little area here. If you know, waiting for the night, that was close. If you saw my HP there, really close. If you're waiting for the night, there's actually pieces of cover. Obviously it's Oryx. You can stand behind parts of his body, his arm or his leg or whatever. Also as well, if you're right on top of your phase, when you're trying to defend the plates or whatever you want to call them, right? When you're trying to do the chain, if you're well on top, you can actually shoot the orbs that the boss spawns in, right? Without worry, because you've already done a good portion of your ag clear whilst weakening your knight. You can also weaken your knight outside of the circle, get in one shot, right? Then go to the green circle when it's at a safer time, then just melt him with one fusion shot or Riskrunner or whatever. But you can see what I'm on about. Like, I'm on top of my ag clear, so it gives me time to do damage to the knight, to take down the orbs that the boss spawns in. Granted, I've just got another wave of acolytes, yes, but it's a smooth transition, this. But it is longer, it's a longer way of doing it. Now I'm going to start using a bit of heavy, because there's loads of heavy on the floor, of course. Riskrunner will work. Well, actually, in fact, all arc weapons will work with the artifact mods, where they do the extra arc pulses. So that's making it even more powerful. But we've obviously got it more so. We've got it on for the resistance that it adds. The trace rifle done a good job for us. It allowed us so that we got more heavy. I could have had something else on, but it's better having it like that because the trace is good because it's a special ammo. Well, it's a pseudo primary weapon kind of, because it's got 500 ammo, so it's still a decent weapon to shoot orbs. You still need that. Like imagine using Riptide plus shotgun. That's good and all, but you need something to shoot orbs because there are times where, even though you cannot ignore the orbs to some degree, there's times when you need to shoot it. So that's why people have been using traces. What's one of the reasons is because you get more heavy, it's more consistent because it's double special. Plus you can sort of use it like a primary anyways. You are penalised if you use primary special heavy. You are penalised unless you get a lot of kills with your exotic primary. So if I did just use Riskrunner for the entire run of this boss fight, so Riskrunner, Riptide and the rocket, I would get far less heavy, but I would have to get more kills with Riskrunner, which is fine and all, but my build surrounds the seismic strike, Insurmountable, Skullfort. I'm not getting health regen on Riskrunner. It's not like, you know, where Solar Titan I can pitch up with a solar nade, get some sunspots going. It ain't like that. It revolves. It's critical that I'm getting shoulder charge kills. So that's why, as I say, I didn't run Riskrunner for the whole run, just at the very end when I needed it just as a safety net, just in case something happens that shouldn't happen. Always, it's the little things as well, like when you're focusing on just dunking a symbol, pay attention to your health at all times. Don't deep sight until you've got full HP. Right? Now you have got that 60 seconds once you pop the ghost, so you have got a bit of time, but you can't mess around with it. But if you feel as though when you're going to deep sight you're going to die, don't deep sight. Go in for some more health regen, maybe another shoulder charge because it's unlimited shoulder charges of course, and then try for the deep sight again, and then your goal should be then dunk. I would say maximum 2 tries at it. After that, if it's 3 tries and you're failing to get your deep sight, you're gonna wipe because the time is gonna run out by then. So you need to sort of be taking advantage of the arc 3.0 speed, and just as soon as you get out of the water stuff, you're just heading for whatever deep sight is. And deep sight's in 3 different spots. So your first protocol is thinking, where's deep sight? Where is deep sight? Is it mid? Is it left or right? Well, if I've come out of this side and I can't see it on this side, it must be mid or right or whatever. So your first thing is deep sight. What symbol have you got? Go and dunk it. And whatever you do, don't dunk the wrong symbol, obviously, because that's a wipe. Which we can all do when we're tired. I've done it when I'm tired in this dungeon. You've done it, you're tired, it's like, okay, it's the 3 stripe A, no, it's 2 dot A. Obviously I've got all different types of different callouts, but you know, there's 2 very similar symbols. I think some people call it table. I don't know how the hell the people are calling it table. I don't call it that. But it's easy to forget. If you are in doubt though and you have crushed the ghost and you haven't seen the symbol because the symbol disappears, what you can do is go and kill a separate Hive Guardian. Right, go and kill the one that you haven't, but you've got to do it in that 60-second time in mind, so you've got to go quick about it. Maybe use a super if you need to, because you can always farm back up a super, and then do it that way. And then the initial Hive Guardian that you messed up on will respawn with acolytes. So that is a way of saving it. Another thing that I haven't spoke about at all, which happened to me today on an Arc Titan run at the end, which I couldn't believe it, is this dungeon can bug out. So similar to Duality where you would bug out with bells, well, it's not. It's similar in a sense. It soft locks you. It soft locks you, so it doesn't kill you. So what happens is the symbols won't show up. Now I've got footage of it, and I tried to work out why it happened. So what happened is the knight that you kill, to get the symbols to appear. The knight was up and then he disappeared. So I think the bug associated with the symbols is associated with ads teleporting. So my knight teleported, but he teleported off map or something, and then just didn't exist. If that happens to you, you've been soft locked, and you cannot continue with your solo flawless. You have to wipe. It was as simple as that. If it happens to you, then it happens to you. I'm sorry that it does. Like, this shouldn't be a thing. Why is progressively with dungeons we're getting more bugs? And the hardest challenge isn't the solo flawless now. It's, have you had a bug on your run? No? Well, you've already solo flawless, you're fine. Or you've had your bug, or you have to reset, sorry. You're 1 hour, 10 minutes deep, you have to reset it. Like, this should not be a thing. I know the game's highly complex, and think about how many exotics they add every season. The game must be getting more complicated at an advanced rate constantly, right? Constant. More things to associate with the codes, more things to change things. The game just must be getting more of a nightmare. I can understand why they've sunset stuff, even though I don't like it. I hate it, right? But I can understand why they sunset stuff, because every time they add something, it's just something else goes wrong. It's just getting worse. But we're getting a new PvP game, so that'll sort it all out. Final phase, so we obviously use Arbalest. Don't miss our Cuirass, because if we did, we would actually lose damage. We actually wouldn't finish the boss by then. I'm obviously planning on killing the boss. We've got a good pulse nade there, proccing. Even though it's not directly hit, it's still ticking for that damage. So, like I said, we've got 45 seconds, so I finished this with good time. The only thing is my timing with the Acolytes wasn't good before this damage. They actually spawned up when I was weak. So they spawned up just now. Boss is dead, but we are weak, and we need to get that. You need to get that finisher kill. Healthy finisher should have proc, it didn't. But hey, that ended the fight. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.